So here we are with another project. This time it will be a panel painting.
For starters, let's take a quick look. The damage is quite vast. Areas with missing paint and ground layer, heavy discoloration due to yellowed varnish and accumulated grime, both panel and the frame suffering from a wood-eating worm, missing parts of the panel in all corners, one visible from the front side, secondary application of red color around the edges of the painting and on the frame, plus major part of polychrome of the frame is lost. As per usual, further documentation before any actual work is done. As the wood had been subject to a wood worm and was practically falling apart when touched, a pre-consolidation was the very first step actually done on this. As it was done before transport of the artwork into our studio, I have not recorded this part. So just imagine a syringe, a brush and an impregnating agent specialized for wood consolidation being applied from the backside. Mounting of this side of the frame has been failing, so here's just me doing some sawing to take care of the nail holding the frame attached to the panel. The rest of the nails were just floating there collecting rust. A significant amount of dirt and dead insects was hidden in here. The next thing was removal of the red, non-original coating. The purpose was probably to consolidate and cover the loose or lost polychrome of the frame, done in a very crude way. After a few tests, a solvent in a gelled form proved to be the effective and safe form. It took some time for the gel to do any work, as I tried to keep its polarity to effective minimum, since any more could and probably would cause damage to the original underneath. So steps here were: apply the gel, cover with Melinax, which is a specialty polyester film, chemically stable or inert, and then wait for some 5 to 15 minutes depending on the area, and finally rinse with appropriate organic solvent and repeat the process if necessary. Now normally, I would first clean the whole painting, then apply isolation layer and do the filling in. Since it was not only the ground layer that had been lost here, but also wood of the panel was compromised, I had to take care of that first. The first thing done, excluding the impregnation done at the beginning, was filling the cavities with araldite, which is a thixotropic epoxy resin specifically designed for wood restoration. As it's a nightmare to remove from unwanted places, I used the paper tape to cover the painting around the edges of the damaged parts. In some areas where the cavity was thin and reaching further, a different filler was used, Arbocell, which is a powdered or fibrocellulose additive mixed with consolidating agent applied at optimal consistency, which is more liquid, through a syringe. The epoxy has hardened and a second layer of different wood filling comes in. This was also used to reattach the parts of the original painting and ground layer that had fallen off. Now the backside work starts with the same epoxy being applied, only in more steps as it needs to harden in between the application due to the amount necessary to prepare an ideal surface for the attaching of new wood pieces to complete the reconstruction of the panel. As this was my first time actually doing this and I am not especially skilled with the woodworking processes, I will refrain from commenting on this too much. I will only mention that the basic reference and some theoretical inspiration was collected from Italian restoration literature focused on the structural conservation of panel paintings. So please, just try not to be too harsh with me about this. as epoxy behaves very similar to how actual wood does. It is very easy to work on with a chisel or a sandpaper. And man, was there a lot to chisel away. And even if my woodworking skills are basically that of a novice, it does look good in detail on the camera with a time-lapse. Now a bit of final sanding down of the edge, as it was too sharp compared to the original that has worn away over time. A few photos to summarize the work done on the backside up to this point. It is not done yet, but for a change of mind, let's take a look at the front of the painting. The beloved cleaning part. Now the rectangle you can see here has already been cleaned. I have not recorded it because the solubility tests usually take me such a long time that I would just run out of memory in the camera. But the difference before and after cleaning is striking. The process is very similar to the one I used when removing the red color. Of course, the constitution of the gel is very much different, as it is always specific to what I'm actually trying to clean or remove from the surface of the painting. I will not go deeply into chemistry stuff, but I will try to explain the basic logic for chemistry applied in restoration processes.
First though, let me explain why I use quotations when using the word cleaning. It's a word that everyone understands, and in layman terms it makes perfect sense. But there is a difference in cleaning and removal.
Surface cleaning in restoration means cleaning a layer while conserving any film-forming material in the best possible unaffected way. In practice, for example, to clean the dirt off of the varnish layer, but not varnish itself. Removal of film-forming materials, organic or inorganic, means to actually remove layers, ranging from discolored varnish, old overpaintings or retouchings, etc. Until this project, the most complicated removal of film-forming material I had done was on a medieval panel painting depicting the Last Judgment. The main difference in these two projects was, the one depicting the Last Judgment was done when I was still a student during the last year of my studies in the Academy of Fine Arts, meaning I had considerably more time since I wasn't dealing with the costs of the restoration, nor was I paid, quite obviously, and I had the means to have a chemical analysis of the materials in different layers, both original and secondary.
Here on the other hand, as this was a private project from a private owner, the time and budget were the main limitation. Truth be told, to this day we don't know for certain the nature of all of the secondary materials that we had to remove from the painting, as it was not just old and discolored varnish with dirt, but most likely a formation of metallic oxalates that complicated the restoration.
So trial and error method. A short reminder here. The reason why I'm not naming the exact composition of the solvents or mixtures of solvents is due to the fact that it is always specific to the one piece of artwork we are currently working on and should by no means be used without proper testing before attempting any removal. I wouldn't want these videos to be used as a how-to-do restoration general guide for non-restorers, as the inability to judge whether the original is being damaged or not might become the doom for the work of art itself. So error here means we attempt things in succession from completely harmless to those with an improved probability of success in very careful steps, stopping the second we judge the method being unsafe for the original. Approximately 40 different compositions or ways of cleaning and removal of secondary materials were tested on this project. So it took days just to come up with the appropriate, not saying the best, method to solve this problem.
Just to create a very simple picture, sometimes to clean a painting, distilled water on a cotton swab is more than enough to do the job safely and correctly, although pH should always be taken into consideration. That being said, for a non-restorer, still don't try it. It could work, but you have to know what kind of a painting it is, material and age-wise, since an irreversible damage could appear later on. However, sometimes you need something like this.
After lots and lots of unsuccessful attempts, we have come to find a way to remove all of the unwanted material from the surface of the painting with a composition that included 5 different aspects and 9 different materials, with the exact correct ratio specific to this and this painting only. Very generally shortened aspects that were considered. First, dry cleaning or mechanical removal, even one with the physical element of heat, was completely inefficient. Second, neither water-based systems with regulated pH specifically adjusted to the surface of the removed material from the painting, nor organic solvents alone were causing a visible change. Third, first success signaling attempt was done with an emulsion type of mixture, meaning both water and organic solvent as a combination were causing a visible effect. Fourth, way and time of the application of the solvent was also crucial. 5. Additives, surfactant and chelator elements. Now this would be a very lengthy explanation, so not wanting to bore you, I will skip this part for now. After the panel has been cleaned, the final part was the frame, which was just as lengthy. So just enjoy the few shots here. The final removal had to be done using a combination of chemical and mechanical elements, aka using your damned hands to do the final work. What was a pleasant surprise though were very small fragments of original gilding. Now to reattach the part of the frame. A bit of cleaning, grinding and sanding to put the detached part of the frame back in its place. Mainly because the panel has curved over time, which resulted in the misalignment of the frame and the painting. Exaggerated, it looks something like this. If the curve of the panel was more prominent and the misalignment of the frame was on all 4 sides, I would have added extra material to compensate for the gap instead of removal, but in this case I opted for the easiest solution, albeit a bit more invasive. In case of reattachment, I didn't want to use nails, as hammering into fragile frame and panel could cause unnecessary damage. I opted for pre-drilling holes for screws that would later be covered, so they would not be shown in an otherwise clean backside. From the front, they would not show at all. In both placements for the screws, I chose spots where there was either non-original wood or it has at least been reinforced from the other side with added new material of epoxy resin. Putting the screws in far enough to actually show when pressed with the frame part being put back in place. The cast dents work as markers to find the exact spot for the second part of drilling. And finally, attachment of the frame and covering of the heads of the screws. Now using a gold hairbrush to get rid of any dust particles before applying a varnish coating, as it would stick and just not look good. And the actual varnishing, or rather a varnish isolation layer before commencing filling in of spots with missing paint or ground layer. The varnish serves the purpose of actually being able to see the colors as they should appear, and as the name suggests, to help isolate the original and non-original addition. A different varnish, not a dimmer one, as that is more on the acidic side, will be applied to the frame that contains gold. Back to the backside. To visually hide the added material, either the fillings or the wooden reconstruction, a retouching of sorts is being done. Not much to say about this, simply match the color well. Now normally, the next thing to do would be filling in. However, in this case, the order will be slightly reversed and we will start with first pass of retouching instead, as we are not attempting a full reconstruction of the image, but rather simply mitigating the visible damage to make the image readable and visually more pleasing to the eye. It's crucial to start with the abrasive type of damage in the smallest visually disruptive areas, then evaluate how much of the medium-sized loss areas will require reconstructing. It's slow, almost meditative sort of job. With the inscription, we managed to decipher, or rather find, and by find I mean Google it, what the text meant. It goes, and now pardon this attempt, Deves propicivis est mihi peccatori, which should mean something like, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Of course, the text will also not be reconstructed completely, as it would be too complete compared to the central area with the portraits that simply cannot be reconstructed completely without guessing what the original had looked like. So making it visually understandable is appropriate. Now the filling in. In places with larger areas of loss of ground layer, we used a liquid chalk gesso as it's easier to apply cleanly without excess material around the spot. We toned the gesso so that it wouldn't be too bright or white, as the work with it later on is slightly easier, and it's still distinguishable from the original. The smaller defects were filled in with a spatula and a regular putty, then rinsed with cotton swabs and a bit of distilled water. I forgot to record the part where I assimilate the surface of the fillings with the adjacent areas of the original, so just imagine I did that. And now, the final pass of retouching.
those disappointed with not seeing the image completely reconstructed, it was a common wish of ours and that of the client. As I had mentioned before, a reconstruction would most likely add our own vision to the image, and that was not desired. I hope you have enjoyed this video project. Any form of feedback is greatly appreciated, criticism especially. But in case you liked it, let us know too. Have a lovely rest of the day. See you soon.